radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Whoa. Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today is Monday, June 9th, 2025. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Yeah. Well, we've got another amazing week this week on Fade to Black, but it's actually a short week. Tonight, James Szubski is with us. We're going to be talking about the Pacific Northwest, Bigfoot, UFOs, and portals, and cryptids, and man, there's stuff going on up there. So we're going to be doing that tonight. Tomorrow night, Mark D'Antonio is here, and we're going to be talking about his new book, The Populated Universe. And then Wednesday and Thursday, we are off air because I am out doing TV production. Yeah. And so there you go. That's what's going on. And then I head to Peru right after that. I do have two events coming up. I'm going to Peru on Monday. Yeah, it's coming up pretty quick. And I will be gone until June 27th, June 28th. Then I come back from that for the Psi Games, the Psychic Olympics. That's August 1st through the 3rd, 2025 in Charlottesville, Virginia. I am filming the new TV show every month for the rest of the year. I've got a very busy schedule in front of me. We're going to make those announcements on everything coming up here in a couple of weeks. And I am also excited about that. All right. I do want to mention, yes, here in Los Angeles, we've had a few days of unrest in downtown Los Angeles. It's a long ways away from me. I'm out here in Palmdale, even though I'm in LA County, but I'm out here in the Mojave Desert, and so I'm okay. It's what goes on here in Los Angeles. It's one of those things. All right. So, yes, that is going on. I am aware of it. It looks like today it was a lot calmer, and I'm hoping that tonight will be calmer still. Okay. So that's my take, and that's what's going on. And I'm sure that a lot of you are wondering, what's going on with Jimmy? He's there in Los Angeles. Yeah. I am, but I am not. I'm about 40 or 50 miles north of downtown Los Angeles. All right. So that is that. Let's kick off the show tonight. Tonight, James Szubski is with us, and we're going to be talking about his research of the Pacific Northwest, a subject that we cover a lot on this show. Not only Bigfoot, UFOs, cryptids, and everything, but it's the Pacific Northwest, and specifically, we're going to be talking about the Columbia River Gorge that I have visited many, many, many times, and we're going to talk about portals and other things that happen up there and these locations. That some of it may even involve the military. Now, what he does up there, we're going to talk about that too as well. And I'd like to know how he landed in one of the paranormal hotspots. He is the chief operating officer of Margie's Outdoor Store. We've got the links for that up in the chat, so go and check that out. And we'll get things started. Let's just do it and bring him straight in. James Szubski, he's right there. James, good evening, young man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, and congratulations on the new show.
Yeah. You know what's great about it? I
Tell me.
can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. That's the best part. People want to know, and I get, well, can't talk about it. I love that part. I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
you seem like the kind of guy who loves not talking about stuff.
Well, yeah, there's that part too. I love giving up the secrets, right? I do. But I have to show the network the same respect that they show me, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just the way that it is, and I have to respect that. You go and you sign contracts, and you agree to. Well, you know what? You got to man up. You gotta honor that stuff. You just have to. But yeah, it's fun going. Nah, can't talk about it. You get the first time guest disclaimer, James. So let's get that out of the way. Which is this, James? It's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends, and where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, it ends. But we're going to end as friends. Now you have to accept so we can move on.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay, man. I don't need that kind of tension. So I want to say to the audience really quick, my cameras went down before showtime. So my main camera shows this right now. Isn't that special? And my secondary camera is dark. Yeah, it's like bizarre. I don't know what has gone on, and the color is off on this one. And it happened right. It was so funny. We started to intro the show, and I saw this little static. I went, what's going on? And that's what I've got. See, if I wave my hands around, yeah, you can see I am just in the dark. So we got to run with this camera tonight. And well, we can do this one, but I'm just on the wrong side. See, if I run this one and I put you over here, yeah, that looks semi-normal. Yeah, we'll run with this. Why not? It's too dark though. It's too dark. I don't know what to. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. Oh. Let's see if we can run. See, now watch this though. See, now I'm blasted out. Man, you can't win. You can't win. I do so many shows, and everything is, man, that's just too bright. That's just too much even for me. So let's back this off. We'll run with this tonight. Were you born and raised up in the Pacific Northwest?
No, I'm originally from Ohio, and I came out to Washington State way back in 1988. I was an infantry soldier stationed at Fort Lewis, and I just fell in love with the Pacific Northwest. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that really loves adventure, and man, this place has it all, from deserts to mountains to rainforests to ocean beaches and caves, and you name it. It's for a guy like me, it was paradise. And so yeah, I've been out here since the 80s. And in fact, I visited the gorge way back then during my Army days with my Army buddies on rock climbing adventures and stuff like that. Had no idea I was going to wind up living down here. But man, when the opportunity to move down here just suddenly emerged in my wife and I's lives, I felt like I won the lottery. And just from an adventure standpoint, then I got down here, and we'll get into the story, but then to find out that this place is populated with all kinds of amazing creatures and phenomenon, and just a whole set of wondrous mysteries to explore. I just have to pinch myself because it is amazing here.
Yeah, you do have everything. Most people make the mistake of, they picture the Pacific Northwest, mountains and trees, and that's fair. But go to Spokane,
yeah,
and you're just like, wait, this isn't Washington State, and that is as much of a desert as where I live down here in the Mojave. And not only that, it's bleeping hot too as well. It's like, man. And so the Pacific Northwest has got everything, including the coastline and the islands, and then heading up, into the northwest part of the state, like Vancouver, and going up to Port Washington, and that area where you just don't realize. Well, I guess the movie Twilight was up there,
Yeah.
the TV series. And so people get a little taste of it. But Washington State has just about everything as far as climate and terrain goes, doesn't it?
Yeah. And not only that, it is per capita the number one state for UFO sightings and for Bigfoot sightings. And so it's, just thick with it.
Did you know before moving there about Kenneth Arnold and his sighting in 1947?
No, like a lot of this was not a part of my core interests. And then to find out that basically that happened in our backyard, like Mount Adams, where those 9 saucers or craft flew to, that's just 30 miles away from my store, and right there in the backyard of the gorge. In fact, when I think of the gorge, there's the Columbia River, Columbia River Gorge is about 80 miles long. And then to the north, we've got Mount Adams and Mount St. Helens. That's the northern limit for me. And then Mount Hood to the south. So it's about 35, 40 miles on either side of the river and about 80 miles long. And
how many and Mount Rainier too as well. How many volcanoes and dormant volcanoes are in your area?
Wow. Well, so in the Mount Adams volcanic field alone, there are 120 volcanoes.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And the place is riddled like Swiss cheese with lava tube caves and lava beds. And there are hot springs everywhere. It's utterly remarkable. And of course, Mount St. Helens erupted way back in 1980. And people don't realize that it erupted with the force of 1,600 Hiroshima atomic bombs, and it obliterated 230 square miles of wilderness land. Like the forces that are still alive and at play out here are truly epic. I mean, it is a place where the landscape is absolutely still alive.
The lava tubes, ET and Sasquatch has to hide somewhere.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Underground cities.
Yeah.
But it's all of those lava tubes connect. That's the other crazy thing. I'm not ballsy enough to go down and check some of that stuff out, but there are caves and lava tubes everywhere in that area.
Yeah. And some of them you get into them. I enjoy exploring them. So
yeah. Not me. You can.
Like you walk into these places and they've got ceilings that are 40 feet tall, and they, just like this giant tunnel. And some of them like are braided and they weave and connect different things together. Some of them are filled with ice all year round. Some of them have, like skylights coming through. It's almost like parts of the video game Skyrim. I mean, it is.
Have you run into any tall whites from Lemuria?
It's funny you should mention that, because there is this, several folks believe that Lemuria was a part of the Pacific Northwest of where some of that was going on. And recently I was going through some old newspaper articles, and there is an artifact, we call it the Underwood artifact, that was found right by the mouth of the White Salmon River. So that's, you've been down here before, where 141 is. And this artifact is this hardened basalt. It's shaped like a ram. It's 2.5 feet tall, broken at the bottom, found under 4 feet of rock and 18 feet of gravel. And the geologists that I'm friends with and we talk to all the time, we are dating where the only place where that gravel could have come from was lahar that came off of Mount Hood 100,000 years ago. And so the oldest carved stone figurines in the Americas are from Ecuador, and they date to, maybe 4,000 BC. This is, freaking 90,000 years older than that, at least. It's like finding an iPhone buried in the pyramids. Like that's the level of technology, because that Ecuador stuff, they're carving into calcium carbonate like a 3 on the Mohs hardness scale. This thing is made out of Columbia River basalt, which is a 7. We can't even carve that today. And it's got these beautiful rounded forms to it and these ram's horns. It's utterly remarkable. And it literally just this week, I was talking to some remote viewers, and we were trying to get a sense of what was the culture that built this. The Columbia River so during the Ice Age, sea levels were 400 feet lower. And they believe that, people cross from Asia across the Bering Land Bridge down along the coast. And the Columbia River is really the first access point to the continent. Everywhere up north there, like Seattle, was buried under 2 miles of ice. But the Columbia River is the first place you can actually get into the interior of the continent. There are archaeological finds here that are 12,000 years old. And I think that's just scratching the surface. The reason why is this river is incredibly productive. Like, millions of salmon come through. It's one of the most archaeological significant places in North America. Mm-hmm. Indians would come to trade here from as far away as Arizona and California and Colorado and Vancouver, BC. And so this place was really active forever. It's basically, like the Tigris and Euphrates, the cradle of civilization over in the Middle East. Well, that's exactly what the Columbia River was. Back in forever. The river's been here for 2 million years. And so the things that have been going on here have been going on for a long, long time. And we have had multiple catastrophic apocalyptic events that have occurred here. Your listeners may be familiar with like the Younger Dryas floods, or the Great Missoula floods are sometimes called. Graham Hancock talks about it. Randall Carlson talks about it. There were these enormous floods that washed across Washington state, created the channeled scablands. They were 300 feet deep. And then they hit the Columbia River Gorge, which is a constricted area. And where my store is, that water was 900 feet deep, rushing at 75 miles an hour. It's carrying boulders and trees and icebergs and everything else. And it is absolutely tearing this place apart. Nothing would have lived. It's considered the greatest flood known to man, because if you took all the rivers on Earth combined, you would still have to multiply that times 10 to get the amount of water that was flowing through the Columbia River Gorge 15,000 years ago. And, that's just one example of the kind of like truly epic, biblical kind of disasters that happened here. And so the history geologically of this place is rich. The types of creatures and you could have full-blown civilizations. You could have a civilization with 50-foot tall skyscrapers. They would not have survived just that one disastrous event that we had down here.
And you've got D.L. Cooper. So, but when you drive, that was a bad joke. That was just tasteless. But when you drive next to the river and you cruise up there, you can see the gorge.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, but you can tell something gnarly happened.
That's
the only way it can be shaped.
Yeah, let me paint a picture for your listeners. The Columbia River is the border between Oregon and Washington State. And it's basically starts around Portland, maybe a little bit east of there, and then it runs through the Cascade Mountains. It is the largest river in North or South America that empties into the Pacific Ocean. And because it empties in the Pacific Ocean, all through the Columbia River Gorge, it is the only river, it's the largest river on Earth that bisects a mountain range. And so you can go from basically 30 feet above sea level to 3,500 feet in less than half a mile. So there are these enormous soaring cliffs. And we've got the highest concentration of waterfalls anywhere in America. They're like Multnomah Falls, close to 600 feet tall. And they're all over here. And so the western half of the gorge is a traditional brooding, mysterious and moody, like Pacific Northwest rainforest, deep forest, huge trees, waterfalls cascading through the forest, a really, mysterious place where things can easily hide. When you think about the Cascade Mountains as a whole, like they encompass the same landmass as 10 United States glommed together. So it's a huge wilderness area. And then as you go through the gorge, you see these giant mountains that have risen up on either side and the river that has cut through with these apocalyptic floods. And you get to the east side where the rain shadow is. And suddenly, like within a mile or two, it turns into this channeled scabland desert where there are barren hills and these rocky cliff faces. And like I said, it's just jaw-droppingly beautiful. You've been here. And like I said, over 600 caves in the area, hot springs, and desert mesas. Like basically, if this was a video game, it would be the world's coolest open world map like you could possibly imagine.
What was your first paranormal experience up there? What got it started for you?
Well, it all started. So my mother-in-law, Margie, had some businesses down here. And about 4 years ago in March, she passed away. And my wife and I were living up in Seattle. And I had been working for companies like Wizards of the Coast, the folks that make Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering and that kind of stuff. And so we had to make a decision about whether we were going to move from an area where there's 4,000 people per square mile to a place where there's 10 people per square mile, and pick up the family businesses and see if we could make a go of it. And we did. And one of those was a store that was sort of like the proto Margie's Outdoor Store. And so I did a little bit of rebranding and sort of souped it up. Margie was sick when she started this business. And so we had the opportunity to sort of build it up a little bit. And we called it Margie's Outdoor Store to honor her memory. And sort of on a lark, I put Sasquatch in the logo. And, it's an outdoor adventure store. We carry climbing gear and packs and all that kind of stuff. And right away, people started coming in and whispering about these strange experiences they were having out in the wilderness areas. And I was like, this is fascinating. And for basically the first year, I was living in the gorge, and then on the weekends I'd drive up to Seattle to be with the family while the kids were finishing up school, and then I'd come back down. So I had, my evenings to myself during the week, and so I'd go exploring and things like that. And there were two experiences that I had that really sort of colored my approach to things. One, I was at an area called Spring Creek Hatchery. It's right below Underwood Mountain, and I was taking pictures, and there's this really weird, like pencil thin beam of light coming down. It looked like the sun. I didn't think it was a UFO or anything like that. Oh, that's really cool. Take some pictures of it. I took some pictures of it. And when I looked at the pictures, there's this glowing blue orb. And, I've done photography editing for decades. This is no lens flare. This is no, anything else. It is clear as day. It's not headlights, not swamp gas. And I thought, geez, I think I captured some kind of glowing orb. Since then, my wife and I have seen them with our naked eyes, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of reports in the store. So that was one where I was like, wow, I captured something on film. Like I didn't hallucinate this, and I have enough sophistication to know the difference between some kind of digital photography artifact and capturing something that was in the environment. So that was one. And then there was one evening where there's this place called Horse Thief Butte. And imagine like a desert mesa, steep sides, flat top, and it's right along the Columbia River. It's been an important spiritual site for Native Americans for millennia, and I'm not exaggerating. And when from the road, it looks like just like this monolith, solid piece of rock. But when you get close to it, you realize that it is riddled with a labyrinth of hidden passageways and natural amphitheaters. There are petroglyphs on the walls. And there are some areas that have what we call these rock nests, where the Native Americans would sort of form the rocks that have fallen on the ground into these sort of circular things. And they would go in there and they would go on a vision quest until they found their spirit animal. When you get on top of this thing, like you see the sweep of the Columbia River, and there's Mount Hood and majestic in the distance. And I was up there, just sort of enjoying the evening. And so there's the butte, and then there's this, probably a couple hundred yards of flat land, and then it drops off steeply, and then there's a lake. It's called Horse Thief Lake. Lewis and Clark actually landed there back in 1805. And I was up there, and I was looking down at that lake, a beautiful evening, and I saw something swimming in the lake. And what is that? There were some, ducks and waterfowl in the lake, so I could kind of get a sense of its size. But this thing is at least 800 yards away. I didn't have binoculars with me, and I'm looking at it. And so I can tell that it's bigger than a person, but smaller than a car. So somewhere in that range. It's got black fur, and it's patrolling the center of the lake. And I thought to myself, what in the hell am I looking at? And for a little context, I am a decorated U.S. Army infantry veteran, former wildland forest firefighter. I've been a mountain guide, and I'm a nationally certified search and rescue EMT. So I know my way around the wilderness. I know what the animals are that live here. And I was like, what animal is bigger than a person but smaller than a car? You know, like bears. I mean, black bears live around here. They're not taller than me. I'm 6'5". And this thing was bigger than that. You know, we don't have.
You're 6'5".
Yeah.
Okay.
So black bear didn't seem likely. The other thing, this thing would submerge for like up to 5 minutes and then come back up. I watched it for 15, 20 minutes. And I thought, what in the hell submerges and is that big and is black? The only other creature that weighs that much around here is an elk, but man, elk never submerge. And
this is a lake, right?
Yeah.
Freshwater lake.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so, you know, I went through the entire catalog of creatures that it could be, and I was like, there is nothing that's that big. It was clear to me that it wasn't a creature that like lives in the lake, or it wasn't an aquatic creature, right? It was something that had gone into the water to swim. And I just scratched my head. I thought, you know, I am looking at something, and you know, with 35 years of professional wilderness experience, I don't know what I'm looking at. And what's wild is just on the other side of that lake. So if you draw a straight line from where I am, like sort of in these cliffs and crags of this, you know, majestic spiritual desert butte, and then you go a straight line to that thing that I saw swimming in the lake, and then to the other side of the lake, there's a wall. And that wall is covered with petroglyphs, you know, like ancient Indian rock art. And one of the things on that rock art is this really weird looking cat-like creature. And it's got, you know, like these big ears and these sort of crazy swirly eyes and wavy water lines under its head. And so that's one of like in this area, there's like 40 or 50 petroglyphs you can see just by, you know, hopping out of your car and just walking down this canyon wall. And so those two experiences were sort of the beginning. And what I would come to find later on is that creature may have been something that we now have over 130 reports of. And I'm going to describe it in detail. It could have to do with some Native American legends. It could have to do with the animal testing laboratory from the Hanford nuclear site upriver.
The what?
Well, there was an animal testing laboratory at Hanford. Hanford was a place where we forged the plutonium for the first atomic weapons.
Wait. Pump the brakes. What do you mean animal testing center? What were they testing?
So there's the Manhattan Project. I'm getting way ahead of myself.
No, you're not.
But,
and I've seen this movie, and I'm starting to get a little scared. What do you?
Yeah. So okay, we're in World War II, right? And the Allies are terrified that the Nazis are going to unlock the secrets of the atom before the Allies do. So Einstein goes and appeals to President Roosevelt. They spin up the Manhattan Project. Everyone knows about Los Alamos, where Oppenheimer's down there with the white collar engineers, and they're designing the bomb. But they need a place where they can forge the plutonium, where they can build the world's first nuclear reactor so they can extract the plutonium to create these bombs. They choose Hanford. So Hanford is a space in the desert right along the Columbia. In fact, there's 45 miles of the Columbia River that flows through the middle of this site. They basically, the government comes in and they kick everyone off of 600 square miles of land. They love this site because it's got water from the Columbia that can cool the reactors. They just had installed this giant hydroelectric dam so they could power all of the systems that they needed to forge the plutonium to spin up the reactor. And it's remote. It's far enough away from the coastline that enemy bombers can't hit it. And it's kind of hidden. Like there's nothing out here. It's like a scrub sagebrush desert. And so secretly they're building this site. But from day one, they have an animal testing laboratory. And the guy that they tagged to run this laboratory is a guy named Dr. Lauren Donaldson. and he's from the University of Washington. His only academic achievement before he gets this top secret assignment, in fact, the president of the university didn't even know what he was doing, was he had actually created a super animal. It's called the Donaldson super trout. This is a fish that through retrobreeding and nutritional programs and all these different things, he created a trout that is 8 times larger and stronger than a normal trout. It reaches sexual maturity in half the time. It can swim in fresh water and salt water. And this thing is super survivable. It's a fish that's alive today. They stock fishers with it all over the world right now.
Okay.
So Warren Donaldson is out there. And of course, they're doing all the stuff in super secret. Now, the only way that I found out about this, well, before I get into that, and the reason why he's out there is because in the 1930s, like, yes, the bomb is a big concern about atomic power, but they kind of knew that radiation induced mutation, but they didn't know much more than that, right? And so the Nazis are out there and they're creating all these super soldier programs. They're creating, super animal programs. The Nazis actually resurrected an extinct ice age creature called the aurochs. It's this gigantic, hyper-aggressive bull-like creature. Think of like the meanest buffalo and bison combined with the biggest steer you've ever seen. They retrobreed to bring this thing back to life. They populate an entire forest in Poland with these things. And it's going to be this Aryan hunting ground where they can go and hunt these massive beasts and be like the Aryan gods that they thought that they were. So the Nazis are doing that kind of crap. Meanwhile, the Soviets are trying to create super soldiers that they call humanzees. There's a doctor, Ilyan Ivanov, and he's trying to artificially inseminate chimpanzees with human DNA. And then he kind of gets in trouble because he decides maybe he can take African women and inseminate them with chimpanzee sperm. So he kind of falls out of favor, but crazy stuff is going on just prior to all this, right? And so the minds in the Pentagon are thinking, geez, well, we're doing all this nuclear stuff. And Hanford is sort of like the blue collar part of the nuclear program. White collar down in Los Alamos, all those brainy scientists down there. This is where it's the production floor, right? And it's where there's like the raw plutonium. And they're using all these crazy chemical strippers, all these insane mutagens from the chemicals just to get the plutonium extracted from the fissile material. And so that's going on all throughout the, as the war is building. Kind of a little side note to that. A lot of people don't know this, but everyone thinks that the Kenneth Arnold sighting is the first sighting, June 1947. But way back in 1945, January of 1945, a glowing object appears over the reactor. There's an Air Force base at Pasco, Washington, and it's got F-6F Hellcat Navy fighters. This is the top of the line, best fighter, Navy fighter at the time. They're propeller planes, kind of like a Corsair.
Oh, Hellcats are cool.
Yeah, they're badass.
Yeah.
And so one night, there are 2 separate incidents. One is in January, right after the reactor comes online, and they're getting ready to start shipping this plutonium down to Los Alamos. And a Navy lieutenant gets called to go intercept this glowing orange object over the reactor. The pilot doesn't know it's a reactor. No one knows it's a reactor. There's like maybe literally 20 people, including the president, but not the vice president, that know what's going on at Hanford at this time. They intercept this glowing orange object. They can't catch it. It's super fast. Then in July of 1945, the same month as the Trinity test, 12 of these F-6F Hellcats get scrambled to intercept an object that the pilots say is as big as 3 aircraft carriers combined. They're told, do whatever you have to do, burn out your engines, but catch this thing. Their operating ceiling is 37,000 feet. This thing goes above that, and they're chasing it like mad. They can't ever catch it. A lot of these guys burn out their engines and have to glide home. So this is what Hanford is, like the very dawn of the atomic age is happening right there. And already we've got this crazy stuff going on. Well, we dropped the bombs on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then the war ends. And so then they make Hanford public thing, and it's a source of great pride. Like, oh, look, this was the Hanford was this part of the war effort, and all the people here made a big difference. Well, then the Soviets start scooping up Nazi scientists. And so we're like, oh, crap. So through Operation Paperclip, we start scooping up Nazi scientists too. And I have found interviews of lab technicians who worked at Hanford said, yeah, my boss was a Nazi. Like, it's 100% verified that they had Nazi scientists working out there. And so then the Cold War starts. Donaldson winds up going down to the South Pacific. And he's a part of, like, you know, the Bikini Atoll stuff and that disastrous Castle Bravo test that give rise to the whole Godzilla mythology and everything. But he stays in contact with Hanford, and there's a new guy that gets assigned to the life sciences program. And
Godzilla's not mythology, but continue.
There you go. Right.
Yeah. Right.
So,
right. Well, so does this explain Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest? Are you suggesting? No, I want you to continue. Let's go back to Donaldson. But did Bigfoot escape from Hanford? Now I'm looking at Hanford here. It's right there in the Columbia River. It's a friggin' gnarly installation. This is the first time. This is why I do this show, James, is so I can learn something. Right now, I'm having my friggin' mind blown. And when you consider everything that has gone on in the Columbia River Gorge, it kind of reminds me of the movie The Gorge. That's what's. Have you seen The Gorge yet?
Yeah.
Have you seen The Gorge?
Yeah, with those like crazy plant people climbing up there.
Yeah. Were you like
Anna Taylor-Joy as a sniper?
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's a super fun movie.
It's such a good movie. But anyway, right? With everything portals and time and vortexes and UFOs and cryptids. I realize that, but I'm tripping out right now. I am tripping out. Could Bigfoot have escaped from Hanford? Okay.
Well,
this is too much. Back to Donaldson. Back to Donaldson.
Creature that I saw swimming, right? So anyway,
then there's that, right?
So I've got this store. People are coming in. They're telling me Sasquatch stories. You know, they're whispering. They're a little bit nervous, but you know and I think to myself, you know what? And honestly, I'm still kind of in a corporate mindset. I'm like, oh, this could be an awesome marketing opportunity, right? And I'm thinking, this could be a unique, thing that we could do for the store. So I say, you know what? We're going to start a paranormal reporting program. And I put a big sign up in the window, and it says, file your paranormal reports here. And it's, Sasquatch sightings, UFO, Fey activity, ghosts. I wanted to hear it all. But I gave my employees really specific instructions. I said, everyone who comes in, we're going to treat with the utmost dignity and respect. And it doesn't matter how outlandish their story sounds to us, but we are going to ask intelligent follow-up questions. We're going to take them seriously. We're going to act as though we don't know whether what they're saying is real or not. And so we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to create a safe place where ordinary people could talk about extraordinary experiences. And I was just like, oh, let's see where it goes. Like, this could be really interesting. And part of the reason why I wanted to do that was, I had these couple of experiences. I'd seen this big creature swimming. I took a picture of that orb. And, in my military experience, there's some other weird stuff that I've experienced as well. And I thought, when you remove the stigma of reporting, you get more information, right? If you're not judgmental, if you don't leap in and try to explain to somebody what they saw and you weren't even there, like you might just learn something that you didn't know before. And so I was really curious, like, what could this be? I had no idea. Here we are 3.5 years later. I just changed the sign. We have 417 reports. And like I said, portals, UFOs, and this one thing that has really captivated my attention, we have 130 reports of giant black panther creatures creeping around the gorge. And when I say giant black panthers, this is what it takes for me to count. All right, the creature has to be a feline body form. It has to have black fur. It has to be here in the Columbia River Gorge, right? And so we know from these things, and it has to have a long tail. That's the final thing, right? So 130 reports. We have senior law enforcement officials that have seen it. I've seen video footage of this creature. We've had people tell me that they've seen it with babies, so kittens. The reports go back to 1968 is the oldest one we have in the store. And so what has emerged is that I know that this is not a cougar. When people describe it, they say it looks like a super jack cougar, like it's super muscular, and it's always at least as big as the biggest cougar they've ever seen. Seems to be completely unafraid of humans, right? And so there are some things that are going on there that are putting up red flags for me. One, there's no such thing as a black cougar, right? Science does not recognize melanistic cougars. It's just not a part of their genetic makeup. The only big black cat in North America is a jaguar. Its range is 1,000 miles south of here at the border of Arizona, New Mexico, that kind of place. So it's black, right? And it's big. It's bigger than the biggest cougar you've ever seen. And it's unafraid of humans. So cougars, we have lots of them out here. They are terrified of humans, and they will abandon a fresh kill at the sound of human voices. And so the fact that these things, like they approach people, really wild. And we've also had, interestingly, no hostile encounters. Like they've never attacked a human. There's one report where it looked like it was going after a guy's goats, and he took some pot shots at it with a 22, which was a ridiculously stupid idea. But that's the only time when they've ever had any kind of aggression towards anything related to a person. Now, what's wild is that half of the reports say that this thing is just as big as the biggest cougar. The other half say it's freaking 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder, weighing anywhere from 800 to 1,200 pounds. All right, now that is bigger than the biggest cat alive today. That's way bigger than a Bengal tiger. And like, there'll be people who will tell me, it jumped in front of my Jeep Rubicon while I was on one of the back roads, and its back was as tall as the hood of my Jeep. Another guy in a Ford Escort said, yeah, the creature was as tall as my Ford Escort's roof. Other people will say that they saw it leap across the road, and from tail to snout, it stretched from the white line through the double yellow to the white line on the other side. A woman she said she saw it. She got up in the middle of the night to go pee. She climbed out of her tent. She saw it standing its flank to her on a log, and it was enormous. And it hopped off the log and started approaching her. So she just ran back into her tent. She showed me a picture of that log with 5 of her family members standing on it. And she said, yeah, the creature was as long as these 5 people standing next to each other. And so like, ooh, I thought, geez Louise, this is a pretty cool mystery. Now, here's the weird part. The very first
it's a pretty big jump from black cougar, mountain lion, whatever, to this.
Yes.
So what I want you to continue.
Well, I've got some answers for you on that. All right.
Okay.
So the very first guy who reported this to me, he was a friend of Margie's. Margie had helped his family out with some things. And so like there's a little bit of trust with him. And we do some things to, make sure people aren't pulling our legs. In fact, when I first started the program, I thought for sure like 50% of those reports would be people BSing us and having fun. But really, it's only like 4 or 5. Like, someone will sign their report, see more butts. It's like, okay, they're just having fun. No harm, no foul. But this guy came in, and it took him 45 minutes to work up the courage to tell me his story. And he said that he saw this creature. He was orienteering near Buck Creek. His compass started acting weird. Now, by itself, out here in the gorge, that's not crazy. Like there are magnetic anomalies everywhere. I don't know if that has anything to do with the story, but it was part of his story. And then he said he got to the creek and he looked up, and there is a cat that is enormous standing on the other side of the river. It's just looking at him. And he said, big, long tail, very muscular, black fur, and a face that looks like a monkey. And I said, exactly. I was like, what? Like, and of course, so I maintain composure because it's not my job to fill his story with what I think he saw, right? My job is to listen to the details of what people are reporting from the field. And I said, well, what do you mean it had a face like a monkey? He said, well, first of all, the snout was flattened, right? So it like normally you'd have a nose coming off on like a lion or something like that. He said, no, like the snout was flattened. It had intelligent ape-like eyes and other primate features. And when I tell these stories, I try to keep some of those details to myself so that when other people talk about it, I can do a check on it, right? And he said, yeah, it looked just like a monkey. Like his face looked like a monkey. And now of these 130 reports, there are maybe 10 or 12 of them that describe this monkey-like face. Some of them even say that there's no fur on the face. It's like a black, leathery type of face.
What? A monkey cat.
Yeah. And so as a marketer,
there's your t-shirt for Margie's.
Yeah.
Right
and
there.
Yeah, my store is in Klickitat County. And so he saw it in Klickitat County. And then, so the next day I was talking to some of my employees and I said, you guys, I've got this amazing story. This guy came in and told me there's a giant black cat and, had this huge tail, super muscular, and it had a face that looked like a monkey. And one of my employees, Missy, she started shaking. And I was like, Missy, what's going on? And you have to understand, Missy is sweet and she's calm and she is not the kind of person to tell a lie. In fact, she doesn't feel comfortable playing pranks on her coworkers because that's kind of like lying. So like, she's a really straight shooter. And she said, James, I've seen that thing myself. And here I was, got this astounding report of this giant black cat with a monkey-like face. And the very next day, someone who I trust intimately, like, she closes the store and counts my money, is telling me that she saw that creature when she was driving through Klickitat Canyon coming to work one morning. And she said, this thing was enormous. It's so enormous that I stopped my car to watch it. And she said she saw it, it was walking along not far from the road. And then it walked into a patch of tall grass. And then she never saw it again. And I said, could you see its face? She said, no, the face was not near me, but that thing was huge. And I said, well, have you told anybody about it? And she said, no. Well, I did tell somebody. I told my family, and they all laughed at me. And they told me that I had probably seen a cow. Now, think about that. This is a grown woman. And does a grown woman know the difference between a cow and a freaking cat? The answer
you probably saw swamp gas.
Yeah, right. And
right.
And I've thought about that a lot. And it's sort of like if you saw a red Lamborghini drive through your town and you're like, dudes, you're telling your friends, I saw a red Lamborghini. And they said, red Lamborghinis are super rare around here. You probably just saw a minivan, like utterly ridiculous. But if you think about her parents' perspective, like there is a strong need to normalize strange experiences, right? Like life is hard enough. You don't need giant black cats running around. And when I told my family these stories, they're like, oh, it was probably this, it was probably that. It was probably something not unusual. And in some ways, like, I don't want to disarm people of their defenses. Like that doesn't sit right with me. Like if you need your life and your world to be normal, it's not my mission to change your mind, right? And it's almost unkind to try to do that in some ways. So I don't mind if people, I've endured tons of ridicule and stigma and people call me a charlatan, all these things we're talking about it. But, that's fine. Just let us do our research. Let us pursue these things and try to understand what's going on with them. So there's two people, a friend of the family who wasn't lying. Like you can tell when someone's BSing you. No reason to lie. It was one of the first reports we got in the store. And then the very next day, trusted employee telling me the same story. And I thought, there's something here. And so we have a radio advertising budget. So I put up ads on the radio, said, has anyone seen a giant black cat?
Really?
And then I put some flyers up at the trailheads and reports started flooding in. And we got reports from police officers, from community leaders. People have seen this thing for decades in the gorge. Everyone describes this big black cat. And some ranchers say, yeah, the thing shows up in our orchard and, it brings its kittens in the springtime. And then someone said, hey, there's a video on Facebook. And it sure as day, like these people are like, does anyone know what this is? It's a feline body form. And you can see this black form moving through the tall grass. And I've tried to contact that person a number of times, but I've never been able to get a hold of them. But I have the video. I just can't show it because I don't have the rights to it. But for me, it's like, this is meaningful confirmation. I was chatting with the sheriff of Skamania County, the next county over where my home is. And, I was telling her about what we were up to and showed her, my maps and stuff like that. And I gave everyone the map behind me is of the Columbia River Gorge. I drew it myself, but I put a lot of the locations of the sightings on it. And she's like, oh, cool story, bro. And I gave her the map as a gift. And she texted me 20 minutes later and said, yeah, I was just showing my other officers your map. And I was telling them about this crazy cat you were telling me about. And one of them said, yeah, I saw the thing by the Deschutes River when I was hunting a couple of years back. And right where James has got one of his icons of the Klickitat Ape Cat. So it's out there, right? And this monkey face thing is perplexing because many reports said, nope, it's got a face that looks just like a cat. And I'll be thinking, man, is this like some kind of reporting error, or, maybe someone is a trick of light or something? And then just about the time that I'm like, the monkey thing's like an anomaly, like it's sort of not part of the story. Someone who really credible, like there was a woman who was a forest fire fighting crew chief, and her whole team got deployed on a 3-day mission between Mount Adams and Mount St. Helens to fight some fires out there. The whole team saw it on the first night of their deployment, and they wondered what in the hell they were going to do if it showed up in their camp at night. And she said, yep, that thing had a face that looked just like a freaking monkey. And I'm like, what? So,
oh man, this is I've heard a lot of, this is amazing to me. 2 questions before we hit the break. Is this Hanford, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that? No, so we can address that. And 2, is this what you saw on the lake?
Well, after the break, I can tell you my theories on all of that. But yeah, there's this, it very well could be, right? So there's a couple of options for this monkey face. 1, we're dealing with 2 different creatures altogether. 2, this is a shape-shifting creature that sometimes has the visage of a, monkey-like face. 3, it's a genetic anomaly where you think of like the difference between a German Shepherd and a pug dog. They're both dogs, they can both mate together. But if this is a population that's living out here, and they're inbreeding, you may have like a genetic defect in them that every once in a while occasionally produces the monkey-like face, right? And so pug dogs are survivable, they can live long lives and everything like that. So it's possible to have some type of weird facial genetic anomaly or defect that's creating this. Now, there is one thing that I will tell you that's really super interesting. So I did a super deep dive on, okay, tell me about big cats. What are all the things that are out there? And while there is no creature alive today that matches a, 1,100-pound cat, there is one in the fossil record. So during the Ice Age, there was a creature that lived all over Western America, and alongside human beings. Human beings were here 10,000 years ago, easily. This creature was called the Panther Atrox. It was an American lion. And it is extremely well known to science because down in your stretch of the woods in the La Brea tar pits, they've pulled out 80 skeletons. And so they know this creature. It is extremely well studied and is well understood. And its size and weight matches the description of the creature that people are seeing here in the Columbia River Gorge. And the most fascinating detail about the Panther Atrox is that it is sexually dimorphic. That means the females are always smaller than the males. So if you had a population you were observing in the wild, you would expect to see half of them as just large and the other half of them as super large. There would be a 50% difference between the males and the females, large ones for the males, small ones for the females. And shockingly, that is exactly what the data is showing us that's included in these 130 reports. So
I don't know. Okay, here's the crazy part, and especially the stuff that I've seen up in that area. We've got reports of vortexes. We've got reports of portals. We've got time anomalies. We certainly have cryptids, and we have Bigfoot. We have UFO sightings that go back a long ways. We have all of the orbs. We have the indigenous culture up there that has talked about the supernatural and the paranormal going on for 1,000 years or more. Even reports from them about cryptids and things that are living out there. And you combine all of that with Hanford and animal testing and at the dawn of the nuclear age, that just throws another spin on this altogether, doesn't it?
oh my gosh, you're not kidding. You talk about the Native American stuff. So I did a deep dive there. Like, okay, are there any Native American creatures that are like this? Well, it turns out there is a race of beings they call the Mishepeshu. And the way that many of the they're considered a race of supernatural underwater panther protectors, right? That's quite a title. But basically, when you're talking about Native American worldview, when they say a being is from the underwater, or it's from the sky realm, or it's from the earth realm, you're talking about a being that has 1 foot in our physical reality and 1 foot in the spirit world. Mm-hmm. And so these Mishepeshu, they are like these archetypal beings. They're these very muscular black panthers. And in some descriptions, it is a black panther with the face of a man. And so when I heard that, I was like, holy crap, like that is a overlay to this tiny fraction of reports that we're getting about these underwater panther protectors, about these Klickitat Ape Cats. Not only that, when I told you about that petroglyph that was on the wall that had the wavy water lines under its head, to me, that is a depiction of some type of panther creature that is in the water, right? And so, again, like I don't know what I'm dealing with out here. I'm the first to admit that I'm going to put a bunch of theories in front of you. One, it's an ice age holdout. The Cascade Mountains are so vast and so rugged a wilderness that it's possible, in an area the size of 10 of the United States that is nearly inaccessible, that some creatures from the Ice Age may have survived through all the cataclysms and all the climate changes and lived in tiny pockets of population in some of these areas and made it through. So it may be the Panther Atrox. At a minimum, we know that it's genetically possible for a cat to be that large in an environment where humans can live, right? So that's theory number one. Theory number two, it's some type of supernatural being, right? And we've got rock art that's showing us that they are some type of cat creatures that seem to have some type of underwater connection. So that's depicted in those traditions as well. And in fact, when you look all around the world, the Black Panther is considered a protector, whether you're in South America, whether you're in Central America, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in, even today, the Marvel character, the Black Panther, he is a protector. Like that is the role of this creature. In medieval Europe, medieval Christian mythology is really convoluted. But to them, the panther, the Black Panther, was the highest and most good creature. It was analogous to Christ. And it said that it was beloved by all creatures except the dragon, which at the sound of its roar would flee into the earth. And so all around the world, you've got these stories of this archetypal Black Panther creature who serves the role of a protector. And in many of those stories, this creature has the ability to live underwater. And what's fascinating is when you look at actual Black Panthers, black jaguars, the ones that live in the Pantanal in Central and South America, they are incredibly adept riverine hunters.
They all swim. They all swim.
Yeah.
They love it. They all swim. Let me, I want to go back to your point about the petroglyphs. So there was an image, and you said underneath her was
wavy water line, like a beard. What's crazy is there's a crack that goes through those water lines. And if you know anything about rock magic, the image on the rock binds the entity to the rock. But when that rock is severed, the entity is free. And so, that's the story. I mean, I'm not a magician or a shaman or anything like that, but that's what I've read. And so it's really fascinating that this image of this panther with water lines underneath it has got a crack running through the water lines. And so there it is.
There's a place, it's you can look it up, and I invite all of the listeners to do this too. It's called the Grapevine Petroglyphs. And I have been there. And it is the largest concentration of petroglyphs in North America.
Oh, wow. That sounds fascinating.
Maybe North and South America. So in this one canyon, I think there are close to 1,000 petroglyphs on both sides of the canyon, and they're all in one spot. Well, anyway, that's besides the point. It's fascinating, and they don't know the age of it. It's in the Mojave Desert. The Mojave Indians have said it wasn't us. So there isn't, in all of the dating and research that has gone into this, and there's not much, by the way, considering how big of a site this is. Nobody knows anything about who created these petroglyphs. But anyway,
very hard to date rock.
Well, but it's also there's an origin story here, but it doesn't tie into anything. You have to see it anyway. So I'm in one of the caves. I'm up there with a bunch of friends and shooting video, and this was at night. And above us, the cave wall's really high. It's like 30 feet high. And up at the top of the cave wall were some petroglyphs, and I could. So anyway, we shot a video. Anyway, this one high, it's high up, is this petroglyph of what looks like a stick man, round head, stick body, arms out to its side, and in one hand is a round circle. He's holding a round circle, the moon, the sun, I don't know. But he's holding a circle. In the other hand, he's holding a plus sign. Okay. So he's got a circle and a plus sign, but he's standing on water.
What? Huh.
With a line underneath it. It's very obvious what's going on. It's a somebody standing on water, holding a plus sign and a circle, kind of like tic-tac-toe almost, right? He's holding but above water, and this is in the Mojave Desert, right? There's no water out there, so yeah, it's a very intriguing thing. And when you're describing that to me, I thought of that petroglyph at the Grapevine site, and the Grapevine site is incredible, and it's right off. Yeah, Grapevine. Look it up. Grapevine.
Yeah, I have to check that
out. Yeah, it's incredible. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, James Szubski, is with us. We're talking about the Pacific Northwest, his research. We're doing a little bit of everything tonight: cryptids, Bigfoot, portals, UFOs, and of course, escaped stuff from a nuclear facility. We're going to do all of that and much more when we come back. Stay right there, Mark. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Today we're headed to Bolivia, Tiwanaku, Peru, and of course, Bumapunku. Brian, exciting. Thank you so much for everything, my friend.
Always an honor. Right behind us is the sacred river of the Inca that goes past Machu Picchu. So we're going to be driving up to its source at 15,000 feet above sea level and then down to Lake Titicaca.
So today we hit 15,000 feet.
Yes.
Crazy. And you can do it with us. All you have to do is go to hiddenincatours.com. Simple. We've got 2 tours coming up next year, one in June for the summer solstice, right? And then another one right here in November. So hiddenincatours.com. Come and hang out with Brian and I and his amazing team.
Right on.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, James Szubski is with us. We're talking about his research into everything paranormal and supernatural going on up in the Pacific Northwest. And before I get James back on the show, I do want to mention I am wearing a saucer t-shirt. And this is one of their designs. And I've worn saucer clothing on this show for years. Great family, great company. It is saucerco.com, saucer, C-O, saucerco.com. Elevate your craft is their tagline. And you've seen me wear a shirt like this over the years. I'm just doing this because I love the company and I love the family, and shameless promotion. But there's the saucer shirt that you see me wear all the time. This is a new one they just sent me. And I also, I paid for this, by the way. Okay. All right. This is a saucer jacket. Absolutely incredible. Oh, that's the back side. This is the front side. Saucer jacket. Amazing company. Saucerco.com. And I saw them at Contact in the Desert, old friends. And the company is amazing. So head over to the website, saucerco.com. And Bill, if you could get that up in the chat, and Jessica and John, saucerco.com. Elevate your craft. All right. No discount. No discount. No, not for me. When I bought that jacket, I'm standing there with it's David, the dad, amazing family, and he was like, no, just I said, no, I'm paying for this. I'm absolutely supporting everything that you guys do around here. So I'm just putting it out there right now, saucerco.com. And if you guys could get that up in the chat, just a great family, great people. All right, let's get back to it. James, I've got to center on a couple of things. We have Kenneth Arnold and his sighting in 1947. Mm-hmm. I've had many sightings up there, and one of I think Mount Adams. There's something going on there.
Sure.
Yeah. I can't quite put my finger on it, but One of the sightings I had up there, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's the beer can UFO. And I was in the middle of the day. It was approximately, because I was 14 miles away from Mount Adams, but it was giant. So I've always said over the years that it was about 400 feet tall and about 200 feet wide. It came out from behind the mountain in front of all of us. We all saw it. And in the middle of the day. And then it phased out. And it was moving slowly. I thought that we were going to see this thing for an hour, moving across the sky, and we were just going to have this amazing. And then it just disappeared in front of all of us. And but that's another example of what goes on up there. And for me personally, to talk about something like that, this is my own sighting. This isn't somebody else, or this isn't something that I've heard or video. No, this is something that I saw. I still don't know what it was. I just know what we saw, and it was incredible. And because it's so sparsely populated up there, I kind of expected other people to report the sighting and talk about it, but it never popped up anywhere. And it just made me kind of feel, was it done just for us? I don't know. You can speculate on anything, but it's, again, just another sighting up in this area. So I'm going to ask you, is it, we have Mount Rainier, right? We have Mount Adams, and everything else that's going on. Is it a geographical situation up there? Is there a UFO base that is up there? I don't know, but what are the connections that you've made between the area and the massive amount of UFO sightings?
Yeah, we have tons of sightings, and I'm not surprised that you saw it and others didn't. And I've got some theories about why that might be, but rest assured, we have dozens of kinds of sightings. We had 8 whitewater rafting guides that saw an egg-shaped UFO, enormous, for up to 45 minutes. We've got pictures of UFOs floating over Underwood Mountain, which is directly above where I took a picture of that blue orb. This last November, we had this bright, almost like a beer can shaped object, but super bright in the sky, stationary. And it was stationary for approximately 4 hours. We know that because we had witnesses on both sides of the river, and then a woman and her son took pictures of it. And we were able to triangulate and figure out that they're all looking at the same thing. And it was right over the town of Mosier. And so we have, again, like the gorge is 10 people per square mile in the built-up areas. Total of 70,000 people live here. Yet one joker like me with a store has amassed 400 reports. And so we like way over index on the amount of experienced phenomenon. My wife and I were stunned when we moved down here that it seemed like everyone that we met either knew someone who had a Bigfoot encounter or had one themselves, or had a UFO experience, or had an orb experience. And I began researching, so what could possibly be going on here? Well, my best theory is that the gorge is scientifically proven to be one of the most unique electromagnetic environments in the world. And the reason for that is our insane geology. So the river's been here 20 million years. About 17 million years ago, for a span of 2 million years, this enormous fissure opened in the earth. It was 100 miles long at the Washington-Idaho border, and enormous volumes of lava flowed out of this thing. It was apocalyptic. This is like the Kilauea thin, soupy lava, and it flowed 300 miles through the ancient Columbia River Valley, 300 miles to the Pacific Ocean, right? And so, and there were 300, they estimate 300 different eruptive events like this. Some of them separated by thousands of years. So things would grow on that lava bed, 1,000 years pass and you had a forest there, and then another lava flow would come. Well, what's crazy is that as that lava flowed and cooled, its magnetic ferric material would orient towards the Earth's magnetic North Pole, right? And then get locked in place when it hardened, when it cooled. Then 1,000 years pass, the next lava flow comes through, and we've got this crazy layer cake. You've seen the cliffs out there. There's layers and layers and layers stacked up upon each other. That next layer comes through, and its magnetic material wants to orient towards the Earth's North Pole. But now the North Pole has wandered. In the last 100 years, the North Pole's wandered over 700 miles. So every layer in the gorge that you see has a unique magnetic signature to it. And then you take the Cascade Mountains start rising, and they start buckling and churning and mixing all that up. And so you've got Mount Adams, a 12,000-foot stratovolcano, Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood, and all the minor mountains and volcanoes around here are all pushing it up and buckling it and churning it and taking that magnetic material and making it even crazier. So now when you look at the government-issued NOAA navigation maps of the gorge, there are bright pink letters on them saying, warning, your magnetic compass readings will be off when you're in the gorge. So this is not like James's bullshit theory. This is like, yes, it's scientifically verified. And more importantly, commercial maritime cargo transports are warned that their compass reading is going to be off. So then you know it's for real, right? All right, so crazy magnetic, electromagnetic environment. Why do we care? Well, back in the 80s and 90s, Dr. Michael Persinger is doing studies on what modulating magnetic fields do to the human brain. And so he invented this thing that eventually became called the God helmet. And he could manipulate magnetic fields around people's brains and consistently reproduce paranormal-like experiences. People would claim that they felt a sensed presence, or that they saw glowing orbs, or that he could turn fear on and off like a switch. And so you've got all of these brain effects going on under the influence of magnetic fields. How does that work? Well, our brains contain magnetite crystals. This is a fairly recent discovery. In fact, billions of them. And they're housed in things called magnesomes. These are sheath-like structures that stack up those little microscopic crystals in our brains, and they lay alongside our brain cells, mostly in the hippocampus and temporal lobes. And when they encounter unique magnetic fields, they torque and exert an influence on the brain cells. And it's now known that this is how animals can navigate over long distances. You've heard all those stories of butterflies and tortoises and, birds and everything else. Well, humans have that too. And so all these people who are here in the gorge in this really unique electromagnetic environment are having experiences like yours, right? Where they're seeing things that they don't normally see, whether it's Sasquatch or giant cats or glowing orbs or ghosts or UFOs or UAPs, you name it. There's this crazy over-indexing. And so really logical question, are they having magneto hallucinations? Like, is this something that it's just like you've taken a drug, or, you got some kind of physiological, starvation thing, and you're seeing things that aren't there? Problem is that we've got photographs, right? We've got footprints, we've got hair samples. And most importantly, like you, we have co-witnessed events. So it's, maybe believable that one person could have a hallucination of a UFO, but not a group of people like you experienced, or 8 river rafting guides seeing the same thing at the same time, describing the same phenomenon. It's unlikely that you're going to have the same hallucination for all those people. And you're certainly not going to have, hallucinations don't leave footprints, right? So what does that mean? Like, how does that fit together? So the theory that I have is, think of the radio in your car. And if you didn't know when you bought your car that you could change the radio station, and every time you got into your car, you heard country music, you would think, oh, reality includes country music. And if all of your friends and family, their radios were stuck on country music station, you think, oh, well, this is what we all agree upon. When you're in reality, you're getting country music. That's just the way it is. But if one day someone snuck into your car and they minutely adjusted your electromagnetic tuner, you wouldn't be hearing country music anymore. You might be hearing classical music or rock and roll music or talk radio. The important thing is those signals are always present in the environment. It's just that you personally are not tuned to receive it. And so you don't even encounter it. It's invisible to you. But when your electromagnetic tuner gets adjusted, and I think it happens here in the gorge more than anywhere else because of this crazy ass electromagnetic environment we have, people are put in a situation where they're more likely to have that adjusted tuner experience. And that's why some people see it, like you and your group there saw it. You may have been under the influence of the same magnetic field. All of your tuners got adjusted and you could all perceive that same thing, where people who are not exactly where you are, who weren't standing on the same ground, not under the same electromagnetic influences, didn't have their tuners adjusted, so they didn't notice it.
So are you suggesting that what people are seeing is there? It's just that they are in that frequency at that time. They're not imagining it. They are tuned into the frequency of that reality at that moment.
Yeah, and again, this is a theory. I think that there are some,
but if you brought up the best point, there's physical evidence that's left behind, whether it's footprints or photographs or videos. You have the eyewitness testimony, of course, but there's the other side. So it wouldn't be a hallucination if you're taking pictures of it.
And consider that this is a two-way street. Those things that we're experiencing are also electromagnetically sensitive, and they may need that adjustment to phase into our reality, which is why sometimes you'll see footprints that end and don't go anywhere else, or you'll have a photograph that's blurry because they're in between that phase. So not only are we moving our perception to see them, they're moving their perception and their presence into our reality at the same time because of that electromagnetic tuning.
How do you explain the portals and vortexes?
Well, that's a good question. And again, I'm still figuring that one out. There seems to be something going on here. And, I kind of want to get back to Hanford for a minute because there's some crazy, crazy stuff that's going on out there. So when I first started hearing about these cats, I thought, I wonder if it had anything to do with Hanford. Hanford was decommissioned in the late 1980s once the Cold War sort of ended. And we had, they called it the Apocalypse Factory because it produced enough plutonium to create 60,000 nuclear weapons, and we didn't need any more. So they started decommissioning it, and then the Cold War ended. And it became the country's biggest Superfund cleanup site. Like, there's no more contaminated place in North America than Hanford. In fact, there's a guy whose job it is to monitor radioactive bunny poop. And basically, those rabbits would sit in the desert. They'd sit next to those barrels of radioactive waste because it was warm. They'd get irradiated, and then they'd hop around the environment out there. It's actually a pristine wilderness, almost like the Chernobyl exclusion zone. And their droppings are radioactive. Thing is those things are getting eaten by cougars and wolves and all the coyotes and all the prey animals, eagles and everything else. And so I thought, I wonder if, there's some kind of Chernobyl effect where you've got these creatures that have encountered some radiation and they're now mutated. And that's why we got these giant black cats out here or all the other crazy stuff. We haven't even gotten into, we way over index on black animals. Like, black bobcats are known to science, but we have a ton of them here. We have black wild rabbits. And it turns out that melanistic creatures are well suited to radiation environments. They find black frogs in Fukushima and Chernobyl and stuff like that. So maybe there's something going on there. And I'm trying to find articles about it. And I find this article that in the desert out there at Hanford, they find a railway boxcar buried in the desert, and it's filled with the half-burned radioactive carcasses of animals, filled to the brim. And I was like, what's going on with that? Like, who's got a train car full of half-filled radioactive animal carcasses? And that's when I started doing my deep dive, and that's when I started learning about Hanford. Turns out that during the Cold War, that little animal testing program that they had under Lauren Donaldson explodes. And this thing can now house 1,000 large animals there at a time. And pretty much everything that we know about how radiation affects biological systems is coming out of the Hanford Animal Testing Laboratory. It makes sense in some ways. If you're worried about a nuclear war, you need to know if a cow eats grass that has fallen on it, can you drink its milk? Can you eat its food? Can you, use its leather? And so they're doing tests on, goats and sheep and cows and chickens and everything else. And they're doing a lot of research on salmon. And then I found this document that said the scientists at Hanford were super excited because they convinced the Atomic Energy Commission to allow them to use the entire state of Washington as their laboratory for radioactive animals. I was like, wait a minute. That's insane. They're irradiating bears and they're tracking them with their radiation. Much of what we know about how ecosystems work comes from the scientists at Hanford irradiating creatures and then watching that radioactive isotope move through the food chain. So really crazy stuff going on out there. And then I found the treasure trove. There is, so once it got decommissioned, the national parks took ownership of Hanford, and it is now part of our national park system. And they did this oral history program where they interviewed many of the people who worked there. And the real gold mine came when I found the interviews with a guy named Bill Bear. And he was the guy who took over the life sciences program after Donaldson left. And I've watched hours of interviews with this guy. He was a infantry soldier, and he is 100% convinced that the atomic bombs over Japan saved millions of lives. And so he's all gung-ho about what he's doing out there. And he tells a story of how they were irradiating apex predators. Those apex predators escaped and they could not recapture them. And the story goes that they had this whole herd of alligators. The reports vary, is somewhere between 20 and 30 alligators, and they're doing radiation experiments on them. In fact, I found one interview where he holds up a picture of the device they used to irradiate the alligators, and there's an alligator in it. And he said, yep, this is what we're doing. Well, one night, 6 of these experimental irradiated apex predators outsmart the scientists, and they escape into the Columbia River. So you now have 6 irradiated alligators swimming around in the Columbia. And this is a total crap storm, right? Because if civilians find these alligators in the water, all hell is going to break loose. So they decide to do a press release to let people know that, yep, we had some animals out here and they escaped, and you might see them in the Columbia River. And so there is historical documentation that backs this up. And he talks about this in several interviews. It's a well-known story. So you got to ask yourself, why in the hell? Like, I can understand how they're doing testing on, animals that are part of our food source, part of the American, food security. But why the hell are you testing alligators in the Pacific Northwest? Like, you have no good reason to be, it's not part of our food chain. It's not part of our national security. Like, what the hell are you doing with alligators? So these alligators escape. They get the atomic security forces, and every day for 6 months, these guys are going out there and trying to hunt these alligators. Well, they go from July to January, and they only catch 4 of them. And they're like, well, they probably won't survive the winter, so we can call off the hunt. And the thing is, these gators are swimming around in the effluvium of the hot water coming out of the reactor. Like, literally, they're taking water from the Columbia, pushing it through the reactor, back into the Columbia, and that's the water that these gators are swimming around in. And now they'll never survive the winter. Well, we all know that there are stories of alligators like in frozen lakes surviving, right? And so in these interviews, Bill Bear is like, yeah, like even into the 80s, I'm getting calls from fish and wildlife guys asking me if I know anything about alligators in the Columbia. And I just tell them no. And then I hang up on him. And he laughs about it like it's a hilarious anecdote from his days working with irradiating animals. And they're irradiating like beagle dogs and like rats and like all kinds of. There's a story of this guy worked for a Nazi scientist in that laboratory, and they're doing dental implants on hyper-intelligent macaque monkeys. And these things are able to pull like eye bolts out of that are on chains, like out of cement walls. And they're like outsmart some of the workers and like, conk them on the head with poles and stuff like that. Like, really crazy stuff is going on out there. And I think to myself, okay, so what in the hell are they? Why are they irradiating alligators? And like, what possible purpose could that have? And, also, like, how does that even relate to these giant black cats? So before I tell you how it relates to cats, I got to tell you a little bit about dolphins. So since 1958, the U.S. government has been using dolphins to guard our nuclear facilities. In fact, right now, a quarter of the U.S. nuclear stockpile is guarded by dolphins. And the reason is that one of the most difficult security challenges in all of atomic weaponry is waterways. And because you could have a Soviet scuba diver, think of a Soviet scuba diver coming in at night, swimming underwater, and he wants to surveil or sabotage your nuclear facility. how in the hell are you going to find that guy? Like sonar, if you're using sonar, like you can't tell the difference between a diver and a sea lion or a tuna fish, right? But you can train a dolphin to tell the difference. And what they did was they rigged the dolphin's snout with this special claw-like apparatus. And they trained the dolphin to ram that diver, and that claw would grab onto them, and then a balloon would inflate. It would bring the diver to the surface. Then the atomic security forces come and they pick this guy up. Because a dead diver at the bottom of the ocean tells you nothing about who tried to, attack your facility. So you always want to get that body and see what intelligence you can get from it. Now, Hanford is by far our most important nuclear site. Like it is the beating heart of where we get the fuel for the atomic bombs. And so this is the most important security area. They had 4 Nike missile launch sites out there. It's utterly crazy. But they also have 45 miles of Columbia River that they need to guard. That's 90 miles of coastline when you count both sides. This is a super difficult security task, right? And if your job is nuclear security, you absolutely know about the dolphin program. There's no question that this is on your radar, what's going on out there. And you'd love to bring those dolphins into the Columbia River. But Columbia River is freshwater. Dolphins only operate in saltwater. So you got to go back to scratch. Like, okay, so if the dolphin program works, let's find the world's best riverine hunter that we can turn into a sentinel creature that we could use to guard the Hanford Reach. And so on your list might be alligators. But
I'm going beavers. I'm going with irradiated killer mutant beavers with big teeth.
That. That's awesome. But a creature that is absolutely going to be at the top of your list is jaguars. Because like I said earlier, these creatures can hold their breath for 15 minutes. They can swim a kilometer in the open ocean. They can kill alligators with a single bite to the back of the head. They have, I think I said night vision 6 times better than a human. They're super strong. And the cherry on top is that they always instinctively drag their prey to shore. So if you wanted to use a base animal as your sentinel program, you would absolutely be looking at jaguars, black jaguars. Navy SEALs, their wetsuits are black for a reason. It's because that's the hardest thing to see in the water. And so what we think was going on out there is that they had an animal testing hybrid program where they're trying to create sentinel creatures. And right at this time, like back in the 50s and 60s is when the first ligers are being born in America, where people are getting really interested in combining the genetics of these, tigers and lions and things like that. And so what we think happened was...
Did you say ligars?
Yeah, ligars, lion and tiger combined. In fact, right now...
I thought that was Napoleon Dynamite. But is that real? Is that something that's real?
Yeah, those things. There was one in a zoo in like the 1940s, 1950s.
No, they're what? No, stop.
Yeah. In fact, if you look up Bear Creek Sanctuary right now, there is a lion jaguar hybrid. It is a lion with black fur, and the thing is freaking humongous. And it's alive today because there's a lion and a jaguar living in captivity together. They loved each other very much, and they had 2 babies, and one of them is this black lion. And
everybody's saying that ligers are real. I thought that was just a joke in Napoleon Dynamite.
That's the real deal, man.
It's the best scene of the movie too, but I thought it was a joke. Oh man, when he holds up his drawing in class.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, hold on. I'm sorry for interrupting. Okay, so back to river sentinels at
and
Hanford.
So we think that these creatures were in the same vein as those alligators. They were trying to create a super animal that would be able to guard the river of Hanford. Those creatures, just like the alligators, outsmarted the scientists, and once they escaped, there was no recapturing them. And if you look at where Hanford is located, if you go north, east, or south of there, it's just this desolate sagebrush desert. But if you head west into Klickitat County, where all these sightings are occurring, it is, well, you've been out here, it is a paradise for a big cat. Like there's abundant food sources out here, plenty of cover, lots of caves to hang out in. And so we think that honestly, like the most rational explanation for why we have 130 reports of enormous black panther creatures creeping around the Columbia River Gorge is because they escaped from the animal testing program at the nuclear facility upriver. I mean, it sounds wild, but man, I'm racking my brain. And what else you got? Like,
I'm
the
looking
ice age
at
holdup that
pictures.
lasted for 10,000 years. Like, it's some kind of supernatural panther protector. I don't know, but what's crazy is that its essence, what they were trying to create, was a panther protector, right? And you talk about how like there's all these portals and vortexes out here. Well, a few years ago, out at the Hanford site, it's like the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories out there. So still a lot of science going on out there. And they built this thing called the LIGO, and that stands for the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. And basically, it's these two tubes that are sort of at right angles to each other, and they extend for 2 miles in the desert. They're these hypersensitive measurement devices, and their purpose is to detect anomalies in the space-time continuum. I am
Gravitational waves. Yeah, gravitational waves.
Yeah. They turned it on, and a week later, they detected anomalies in the space-time continuum. And they
2 days later. 2 days later. Actually, they turned it on. It might have been the same day or the next day. But yeah.
And they were shocked.
And won a Nobel Prize for it too, by the way.
Yeah. So like you talk about, is there weirdness going out here? Like, yes. And the science is crazy. And so, we have seen reports of so many wild creatures. And like, of course, we have tons of Bigfoot sightings. And of course, we've got all these ape cat sightings. Of course, we've got orb sightings. Of course, we have UFO sightings. We haven't even touched on like the ghost stuff that goes on out here. But all this stuff is happening out here. But we also have like a ton of like really weird one-off cryptids. I've got this sort of souped up 4x4. Its license plates say cryptid on it, and it's built for paranormal investigation out in the wilderness areas. And my whole family was in it. We were going to go bomb around in the dirt roads above our house. And we pulled off to the side to let another vehicle pass. And my daughter was looking out the window. It's an FJ Cruiser. And she said, "Oh, there's a big snake out there. There's a big snake out there." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And so as we were pulling away, she said, "Tell us about the snake you saw, River." And River said, "Well," and she's like 9 years old at the time. "Well, it's a big, long yellow snake, about 3 feet long, and it's got these frills on the side of its head that start sort of red and they fade to yellow when it gets close to the head." I was like, "Really?" It had frills on the side of its head, and I've asked her a bunch of times, and she's drawn pictures of it. No research. There's no such freaking thing as a frilled-headed snake in North America or in the freaking world. There is, and my daughter, right there, sitting right next to me, not making it up, thinking she just saw one of the snakes that lives out here in our new home, seeing a frilled-headed snake. We've had all kinds of crazy hairless dog-like creatures that people have seen out here that whistle and seem to fear the sunlight. We've had white furred creatures that gallop on all four legs that don't seem to have a head that people have seen sort of galloping alongside their car on some of the dirt roads. And I think about this, I'm like, we have all these one-off, like not related to any other kind of cryptid story you've ever heard out here. And it makes me think that there's some type of crossroads or some, like these portals are either electromagnetically induced, I don't know if it's a chicken or egg situation with Hanford, but like you've been out here, firsthand that it's legit. There is weird stuff going on out here.
I saw the only legit orb that I can say is an orb. I saw it up there at Mount Adams. And this thing, I want, with all of your orb work up there in research, I wonder if you've ever heard of anything like this. But this came out, I was with 100 people. It's like 11 o'clock at night or so. And we're all out there sky watching and goofing off. And so behind these trees, I'm sitting down. I'm just like taking a break. And off to my left, I probably have 75 people. And I have a group of people. It's a family that I know. A husband and wife and their kids are standing behind me. And I sit down in this chair and I'm just taking a load off. And I look out into this field, and then I see from behind these trees, it's about maybe 100 yards away. I see this gray thing. I don't know what it is, but it comes up. I see it behind these trees, and it comes over the tree and then comes down. And as it's coming down, it starts to get big. And then it looked two-dimensional, flat, like a quarter. Okay. It wasn't a sphere. But it comes down and it grows, and it's probably, I'm going to say 30, 40 feet tall. And it's right in the middle of the field, about 100 yards away. And I'm looking at it. I thought it was something in my eyes, James. I do this, right? And I look again, right? Yeah, something with my eyes. Again, and it's still there. And I thought, wow, okay. And this lady behind me goes, is anybody looking at that gray orb out there in the field? And I turn around to her and I go, you mean this shit is real? And I'm looking, and then I heard everybody in the dark to my left talking about it, and it just went away. So what do you make of that? And is there a specific location up there where orbs are more prevalent?
Yeah. So around Mount Adams, we seem to get a lot of that type of activity. And there are people who live up there who say, yeah, it's so common that they are kind of bored with it. And there's another guy who told me he was driving through the desert area, sort of a little bit east of where you were. And he thought he saw like Indian casino lights. And so as he approached, he's like, oh no, this is a freaking hole in reality. And just like you said, it looked two-dimensional, but what was on the other side of it was not the normal background, right? Mm-hmm. And then he said he saw a black cube come out of this portal and then fly down the Columbia River Gorge.
Oh, wow.
So we get, and I love hearing those kind of reports. Like, you can imagine how awesome it is to sort of be at ground zero and have all these people trust you with these stories. Like, this happened to me 20 years ago. I told one person, they told me I was crazy or I was on drugs, and I haven't told anyone until I'm telling you, James. And, that really was the value of creating that sort of extreme respect for anyone who has got these stories. But we do hear a lot of that. And like I said, it seems we hear about it down by the river. I don't know if you know the town of Lisle. You've been down here. There's a tunnel right on the east side of the town of Lisle. Portals right over there. Other people have seen portals floating above the mountain, Mount Adams out there. We've had those reported in Hood River. We've had them reported close to up the Hood River Valley. And, talk about the orbs themselves. One was a guy was driving down 84 on the Oregon side, saw it flying above the river, and then it dove into the water, and he could see the light underwater as it traveled, continued traveling under the water. And so, yeah, there is, just a preponderance of these types of sightings that are going on out here.
I should have, you know what? I should have ran out there and jumped through it.
There you go. What would have happened? It's a crazy situation. We do get a lot of reports of people having time and place displacement experiences. In fact, I had one myself, and it really threw me for a loop.
What happened?
So there's an area up here called Broke Leg Barrows. On a lot of the normal maps, it's called the Big Lava Bed. It's an area the size of Manhattan. It's basically a mountain valley that was filled with lava, and it's now like all broken up and churned. And you can imagine like a lot of lava tubes are formed, and those lava tubes would collapse and they'd create trenches. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my personal history just to give you some context for this. So I have been a professional land navigator since I was 19 years old in the Army. I've been trained by world-class organizations as a firefighter, as a search and rescue EMT. I absolutely know how to navigate in the wilderness. I've been in every kind of terrain that you can imagine, jungles and swamps and forests and glaciers and deserts and you name it. There is no more treacherous, dangerous, or difficult terrain than a lava bed to travel through. And this place is mysteriously, it's just weird. Compasses don't work properly there because of the magnetic condition of the rock. Cell phones, there's no towers. You don't get any cell phone reception. And sometimes even satellites don't work there, which I don't understand why that is. Local hunters don't like to go in there. There are no trails in this place because it is such difficult terrain. We call it Broke Leg Barrows because I don't think you could travel more than a mile in there and not get hurt. You remember in Lord of the Rings when Gimli is talking about Emyn Wheel and he says, it's an impassable labyrinth of razor-sharp rocks. That is exactly what this place is like. And there's 4 service roads that go all around the outside of it. And so you can get access to it. But so I was in there, and we have had a ton of reports of the ape cat in that area, ton of reports of Sasquatch in that area, bunch of reports of UFOs and things nearby there as well. And so I decided I was going to go up alongside, and there's a place we can kind of get access. So I parked my rig on the side of the road, pointing into the lava bed. And there are like moss-covered, like stunted moss-covered trees that are twisted and, these micro canyons and everything. And so I get in about 100 yards and I find this really interesting trench. And, as a land navigator, a life and death land navigator, like, there's a few things to know. Like, first of all, there's a bunch of subroutines that you're always running in your mind when you're navigating. And you're like, keeping your pace count, you're dropping landmarks, you're keeping track of the position of the sun. There's 1,000 little things that you're doing so that you never get lost. I can't remember the last time I got lost in the woods, literally. And in fact, I'm the kind of person that you call when someone else is lost and they need to be found. Right. And a part of that whole skill set is that when you see a geographic feature, it's like seeing someone's face. Like if you saw my face and then I went away for a half hour and came back, you would recognize me. You may not remember my name, but and even if you saw me a day or a week or a month later, I know that guy, right? That's the way it is when you're a professional land navigator. Like you recognize places. If you don't, you die or other people die. And so there's this really interesting trench, really unique, convoluted, lots of, weird lips and things in it. A collapsed lava tube cave is basically what it was. And so I flew my drone up and down it a couple of times thinking, this is some kind of cool footage here. And then my drone clipped a tree branch at the south end. And so I went down to gather it up and folded the thing and put it in my pack and said, okay, I'm going to go from the south end of this trench to the north end of the trench, about 120 yards. And then I'm going to take a 90-degree turn and go west deeper into the lava bed. And I'm going to go 800 yards into the lava bed. And so I go 120 yards and then make that right angle turn and go 800 yards. And I find another really cool trench. And I think, oh man, this one is cooler than the first one. I'm going to whip out the drone. I'm going to fly the drone up and down this trench and get some good footage of it. And I'm flying the drone back and forth thinking, wow, man, I'm so lucky I found this other really cool trench. And I look over my shoulder and I see my car. I'm like, what the hell? Like, how could my car possibly be here? I'm like at least 900 yards away from where it is. And it's just 100 yards away. Like, how could this possibly have happened? And for anyone else, he just talking about, I got lost in the lava bed. But for me, like, that's a nigh impossibility, especially since I'm looking at some type of feature that I had already intimately studied before.
Half mile in the wrong direction, too.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Like my brain was the exact sensation of waking up from a dream, like that sort of fogginess, like what the hell is going on here? And then I finally put it together. I was exactly at the spot where I had crashed the drone the first time. And it completely flamboozled me. My first thought was, this is impossible. There's no way this could have happened. And then, as I started to think about it, this place is so vast and so overgrown. And some places it looks like the surface of the moon. Other places it looks like some kind of fairy tale forest. You could easily hide 7 Ewok villages of Sasquatches in here and no one would ever know. And the second thought that I had was, wow, if something didn't want me to go deeper into this lava bed, this was the most benevolent and gentle way to bump me back to start and put me at a place where I could safely get out and know where I was. And there was a real feeling of, wow, this was not an aggressive act. This wasn't an abduction. It was, my memory was seamlessly edited that I didn't get to know what I experienced for what turned out to be 2.5 hours. What I thought was like a 12-minute walk, right? Bump back to zero. And then my third thought was, this is super exciting. Like, I'm finally starting to experience some of the things that people have come into my store and reported. And we've heard a lot of stories like that, where people are traveling and they think they're a certain distance away from their car, and boom, they're only 5 minutes away. And so there seems to be some type of phenomenon where your consciousness gets turned off and then you get relocated and an amount of time gets expended, which is not normal. So it's just a fascinating thing to actually have experienced firsthand. And, to me, that's part of the magic of this whole experience is, making these connections with these people who have these really profound experiences, but don't feel like they can tell anyone about them. And then being able to follow up on some of those stories and get into these wilderness areas and then begin to experience some of this enchantment for myself.
It doesn't even, you're right. And it also doesn't have to be a wilderness area.
Yeah.
This can happen in a city.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other part about this. I got lost. This is just a stupid story. It just sounds too crazy. I don't even like talking about it. I sound like I'm nuts. But I was like 21, 22 years old here in LA, in Pasadena. And I got lost in my car across the street from my house.
Wow.
Yeah. And this went on. I don't even like it. It's embarrassing. And I had a half a tank of gas. I got lost in these in Pasadena, man. Pasadena. And that's
the whole grid situation with the roads, right?
I almost ran out of gas in my car. And when I came out, so I finally it's just embarrassing, man. But I finally get back to Lake Street, and I pull into my driveway, and I'm panicked, and just out of my mind. I just spent 3 hours across the street from our house. Right? So anyway, I walk in, and one of my roommates says, "Hey, man, so did you get it or whatever?" Right? I was like, I walked straight to my room, sat on my bed, was like,
wow.
Like I was lucky to be alive. Now, how do you true story? And how do you get lost across the street from your house?
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed about the whole thing. I don't know, man. I don't know.
What's interesting is that so many people start their story with, I was completely sober, James. I'm not kidding you.
I know, right? I know.
And so they want you to know that they were in a non-altered state of mind when they had this incredible experience. Like one of my employees saw this. He was driving home at night, like 1:30 in the morning through the desert. Standing on the side of the road, not taller than the hood of his car, is a thin, spindly, pale creature with a head that looks like a praying mantis. He drives past it. The lights in his center dash go dark. His phone goes crazy. He gets 100 yards down the road. He starts feeling dizzy and out of sorts. And it's the same place where he had seen owls standing in the road on several other occasions in the middle of the night. And, and he said, James, I'm telling you, I was completely sober when this happened. And again, like your situation, I'm sure you were completely sober when you had this experience, and it's just completely unsettling, but that you should know where you're at, and suddenly you don't. It's remarkable. And it's just one of those things that's part of the fabric of the weirdness down here.
You know what I never did again? I never went across the street from my house. That's what I went up and around. There was this trunk of trees in this section of Pasadena, beautiful neighborhood. I had a couple of friends that lived in there that I never visited again, by the way. But I never went and took the shortcut. It was like the enchanted forest, right? It was just like, no, don't go in there. But it makes you wonder when you hear these stories, and we've heard them over and over again, they're nothing new, about people that drive through a part of town that they've driven through a million times, and then it suddenly like goes black and white, right? And everything is different as it was 50 years ago, kind of thing.
Wow.
And they don't find what the building that they were driving to, right? The gas station or the store or whatever. And then they come back and everything is normal again. And you hear about that, and it just, is it that momentary time portal, time loop thing that Albert Einstein has talked about, some kind of weird, wormhole. I had Simeon Hine on the show last week.
Oh yeah, Simeon, I know Simeon.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's
He's been in the store a couple of times.
Yeah, he's talking about cold fusion happening in nature, right? And causing some of these anomalies, and it just makes you want, well, yeah,
well, the thing about it is, like, for me, having had that experience in the lava bed, the Broke Leg Barrows, now I'm like magnetically attracted to it, and I'm trying to find more and more excuses to get back in there. And because to me, like, that's where the frontier of like the weirdness is. And as an adventurer, like, that's sort of the, when you're a soldier and all those other things, like, I steer into those things because to me, like, the wilderness is kind of a accomplished thing, and this opens up a whole new frontier for me. And so where other people are like, oh, you're crazy, what are you talking about? Like, to me, it's like, oh, finally something that can challenge me in a way that I've never been challenged. Like, adventure is when the outcome is unknown. And for me now, like, when your job is to go save people who have gotten themselves into trouble, like, there's not a ton of unknowns for you. Like, you pretty squared away and can handle yourself in just about any situation. But I kind of love the fact that there's something out there that I don't know if I'm maybe 80% ready to handle some of these things. And that to me is what's exciting and compelling and wondrous. Like, to me, I feel like a citizen scientist, and it's just like, there's this like embarrassment of riches of all of these wondrous mysteries. And I love that here in the gorge, they don't all have answers. And that's what makes this place so magical for me.
Yeah, you got to chase it. You got to chase it. You got to chase. What's the alternative? I think that having the mind of a child, man, the tag, I wish I could show this to you. The tag on this jacket down here, Hank, just started.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It caught my eye. It caught my eye. And, man.
Strange things are afoot at the studio tonight.
I'm flipping it up. Oh man, there's weirdness. I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll wrap. By the way, great show tonight, James. Years ago, this is probably 10 years ago. My old studio, same as this one, completely soundproofed. Okay, so if you look, I'll show you this back wall. Okay, that's soundproof covering.
Oh,
right?
Cool.
I've got it on the ceiling. I've got it on the wall, right? Everything in here, it's dead. Right. So you take this, you've never heard silence like, that is in here. It's dead. So after the show each night, right, I close down, pull off my headphones, show's over. When I pull off my headphones, it's dead quiet compared to what's going on in here all night. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's dead quiet. And then behind me, I'm sitting in the studio. I take my headphones off and I put them down. And one of my guitars on the wall behind me strums. Yeah, it goes just like this. Right? And I'm sitting in the studio like and I look, it was like, okay, something fell and hit the strings and strummed it. Yeah, that happened.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm looking at, so all you do with that is enjoy the moment and file it away for future reference. I'm not here to try to solve the world of the paranormal or physics or quantum, this or that. I'm not. It happened. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. It was crazy.
And how lucky are you to have experienced it and then not dismissed it? You know, like, it's so easy to normalize these things. It's so easy to say, like, so many people say, oh, my life is boring and mundane. I wish there was something magical going on. I wish there was something this was more interesting. I wish it was more than just like the 9 to 5 grind. But when they're confronted with a possible mystery that could be amazing, they instantly turn that Lamborghini into a minivan, you know, and they it's so important to allow yourself a moment of not knowing what something is. That's when the mystery can begin to unfold, and you can discover things that, you know, that are wondrous. I mean, that's really the magic of it.
See, that's what's so great about life. And I have empathy. I feel bad. I feel sorry. I feel pain for people that don't give a shit.
Yeah,
that's the beauty. I mean,
I just steer straight back into the grind. You know, like the magic. The door is right there. Like, you could just walk through it. Like, for me, I've entered this enchanted landscape where my life every day is filled with mysteries, and amazing individuals show up and tell me their most remarkable stories, and then I go out and explore, and you know, it leads me on these incredible adventures. That door is available to anyone. But so many people say, I don't want to look like a weirdo, or I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to look like a fool, or I don't want to be different. And then they wonder why their life is gray and boring.
Yeah.
You have to
that guitar strumming story, I never told anybody. I didn't walk out of the studio. I didn't get on the phone. I didn't text. I didn't post on social media. I just, like, you know, but that's what drives me. That's why I have, you know, guests like you on the show to talk about this stuff. I don't know. I just know that it goes on. I don't know what the explanation is. I have a feeling, by the way, we've been off the air for about 4 minutes. This will be in the podcast, though, in the archives. The explanation for all of this, well, I can't explain Hanford. That's some true weirdness there. But I think that fundamentally it's a very simple thing that will tie ghosts, the paranormal, telepathy, interdimensional stuff, and a lot of UFOs, and some people call it UAPs these days. That all of this is just probably one thing. I just don't know what it is, but it's, you know, it would certainly explain an awful lot if it is some quantum entanglement basic thing, you know, like consciousness. I don't know, but I think we're getting closer and closer to something like that, and a discovery like that. And then, you know what, though? Then you are not crazy, right? You know what I mean? And
totally.
You know who's going to be on board, though? Neil deGrasse Tyson. He'll be like, I knew it the whole time.
Suddenly he's gonna be all in. Well, that's totally with the thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, James, thank you so much, and I look forward to our next conversation. Where can everybody find you?
Margie'sOutdoorStore.com. We're on Facebook and YouTube, a little bit on the Instagram, but I'm lame at it all. Like, honestly, I want to do more. That's why I love coming on these podcasts. You know, I don't have a book to sell. I just love talking about it because I think it's so amazing. And I appreciate you giving me some time to be able to do that.
Great conversation, James. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And I look forward to the next time. Thank you so much.
Be well. Thank you.
James Szubski, everybody. His links are below over on our website, and also throughout social media. We've got it up in the chat room too as well. There you go. Perfect show tonight. I want to remind everybody we've got a short week this week, but tomorrow night, Mark D'Antonio is with us. He's got a new book out called The Populated Universe. Always great when he is on the show. So that's what's happening tomorrow night right here on Fade to Black. So until then, you know what I've got, and that's Go back, Lee Tap. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.